William Lawrence. He's a professor of political science at the American University in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us here at TRT World. I know it's quite late there. Now, William, let's start with the U.S. Reaction. Bigger than 2014, that's how they called it, this latest build-up. What do you make of the U.S. reaction to what's happening in Ukraine so far?
The U.S. is quite alarmed. The U.S. says it's bigger than 2014 without giving a number, but other U.S. estimates put it at over 80,000. The EU is saying over 100,000, and the Ukrainians are saying over 110,000 troops have amassed on the border. And there's three possible explanations. One is the Russians want to influence the negotiations. That was the majority viewpoint of most analysts until lately. One is that the Russians are preparing to invade again. And the other is that the Russians are preparing to defend because they think Ukraine is about to move to take its territory back. And both the Russians and the Ukrainians have been making a lot of moves in recent weeks to provoke each other in this sort of war of words. And it's just not clear yet what that war of words is going to lead to. But we are in a worse situation than we've been since 2015. And so it's something to pay close attention to.
Right, most definitely. The U.S. even saying it will continue operating its warships in the Black Sea, despite Russia's actions beforehand. So what happens if Russia continues with the military deployment of its army in Ukrainian border? Can we expect a concrete action from the US or from the EU? The EU also says it's the highest military deployment of the Russian army ever when it comes to the Ukrainian borders.
Well, on the one hand, I think the Biden administration wants to make it clear that it will draw red lines, but how far it will go to protect those red lines, that part isn't clear yet. We also still have Merkel in power, and a lot of people are predicting that Germany will start softening its position after Merkel steps down in the fall. And it may be that Merkel wants to help draw a bit of a red line as well to demonstrate full support for the Ukrainians. But what does that mean? It means sanctions. There are hundreds of sanctions in place right now, but there could be more. Expulsions of diplomats, and everyone's lining up to congratulate the Czech Republic with its latest expulsions, which are not linked to this, but another sort of slap in the face to Putin. And then there's, what do the Ukrainians actually need? They certainly have a lot of the weapons they need. They have all the intelligence sharing they need, and they're not really asking for American boots on the ground. So it does come down to some degree to shipping, as you said. The Russians have said they're going to block access of Ukrainian and other foreign ships to certain parts of the the Black Sea, and that could provoke itself naval actions. The whole situation is very much on tenterhooks. Of course, the U.S. is looking at both the Taiwan-China conflict and the Ukraine-Russia conflict as a place where a war could begin at any moment. And so Washington is very much on standby waiting to see what happens. But how far the U.S. would go, that depends on what Zelensky needs and what the Europeans ask the Americans to do. But the U.S. will not just sit back.
Right. And meanwhile, I was just mentioning earlier one of the latest lines, Kiev now saying all sides committed to finding a solution. Is this giving us any hope that we are not going to see further escalation? What do you make of this statement from Kiev?
No, I just see that as a statement that they would like to start a de-escalation. Now, the Europeans had put out a statement, actually it was the French and the Germans, saying that both sides need to stand down when the Ukrainians had really stood up. And so that was seen as too much of a two-sidedness. And then they revised the statements to say, well, no, actually the Russians need to stand down. But Zelensky, when he came to power, said he wants to negotiate over, he said, who isn't in Donbass and who is in Crimea and wants to negotiate with the Russians. Those negotiations fell apart last October, more or less. And then we had this war of the words I was talking about. But the de-escalation process should begin and could begin, but it doesn't depend only on what the Ukrainians say. The Russians have to play ball as well.
William Lawrence, I really appreciate your insight for us on this topic. He's a professor of political science at the American University in Washington, D.C. Thank you.